Hi everyone, this is Gary Wilson and welcome to tonight's live webinar. It is Wednesday, January 20th. I'm getting ready to lose a day here. I am in South Florida. I'm in Miami tonight. I'm teaching at the Ventura office tomorrow, and I go all the way up to Melbourne on Friday. Today I was at the Weston office. It was a great class. So in any case, where I'll be, my whereabouts are this. So I'll be finishing up on the southeast and Atlantic coast of Florida this week. I do have Jupiter on Monday, and then I go to Atlanta for 2 days for my own coaching, and I teach a day up in Atlanta. Next Thursday I'll be at the Snellville office in Atlanta, Georgia, and then the week after, from Friday, July 29th till Friday, February 5th, I'll be in Lake Tahoe, California for my mastermind group, an annual event we have there. A lot of top guys in KW are in the mastermind group, and ultimately, some of you will likely want to look into that group to potentially join. I know some of you already have, and it's one of the things you might want to aspire to, because that group of people are absolute top-notch rock stars, and the other thing too is they're actually pretty good guys too, and they do have a women's group. They have a men's group and a women's group. In any case, after that I'll be back to Florida. I'll have Tampa for a week, then family reunion for that following week. The week after that I will be in Phoenix, Arizona for about 3 weeks. I've got 1 week of teaching, and then 2 days in Albuquerque and Santa Fe to teach more. And then March 2nd through 4th, I will be at a conference where I won't be teaching those 3 days. Then 1 more week of teaching in Phoenix, followed by 2 weeks back in Southern California. The last week of March, I will likely take off because it's the week after Easter, and I really miss my family. So I'm going to go visit my family in Virginia, okay? After that, I'm not quite sure, but it looks like it's going to be in April, North Carolina for a week, followed by South Carolina, followed by Tennessee, like Chattanooga, Knoxville, Oneida, Johnson City, those areas, and another week in Georgia, and then back down to Tampa for 2 weeks. So in any case, that's way out in the future. I just want to let you guys know where I'm going to be coming up. So if you're in an area where I've taught before and you want to do something like a workshop, and I'm going to be in that area that week, please let me know well in advance. If I can make it, I will, and I'll help you out. That's why I like to give everyone my schedule, okay? In any case, let's move on here, guys. Okay, where we are right now is, if you think back to the last couple of weeks, 2 weeks ago, we went into the first and second modules, okay? Way back the week of, I guess that was the week, New Year's week. We were dug heavily into Module 1, and also the very first few things you need to do when you first get started. So for folks like Jamie's brand new here, and a few other folks in Florida, go to the website, the membership section, and pull up the recording of the webinar from, that date would have been December 29th. It was a Tuesday, I believe. And in there, you want to listen to that webinar because it tells you a few basic things you need to do right out of the gate when you first get the program, okay? The week after that, we went into analyzing, well, I can't remember exactly which week was which, but 1 week we focused on flipping, and the other week we focused on rentals. I think the week prior is where we focused on rentals. Yes, we did, in fact. We went over the calculators in the spreadsheets. And by the way, I have a correction to make there. I had the formulas right, but me and my 53-year-old brain, I was telling you for net operating income, for example, to divide your net cash flow into the cost basis, and it was the other way around, actually. So whether you're doing cash flow calculation, cash on cash, or your cap rate, you want to divide your cost basis into your net cash flow. That's the way you do it. It's not the other way around. Most people figure that out. But I realized afterwards, plus I had a few people bring it to my attention, so I appreciate that. And I wanted to do a correction on that. So in any case, 2 weeks ago is where we went over the calculators. Last week we focused on flipping, and we went over some of the forms you use, the analysis forms. We went over the ARV, okay, after repair value. We went over the MAO, maximum allowable offer. And then we even went over the sheet of instructions you follow when you work with investors. That was on flipping. So in any case, if you want to bring up the one on flipping, for example, so Jamie actually just raised that question. So Jamie, what you want to do is look at last week, and that would have been, what day was that? Last Tuesday, the 12th, Jamie, we went over some of the flipping material, okay? And the week before, which happened to be on Wednesday, the 6th, we went over the rental calculators, okay? So that was the last 2 weeks. So what I'm doing, guys, I'm because it's the beginning of the year, and some of this we haven't reviewed for a while, and we have a lot of new folks in from California and Florida. We're going to start back and go through the material, not every single line, every single detail, but just the big things that to me take more time to grasp, and also we benefit from repetition. So some of this, like what we're going over tonight, which step-by-step instructions for working with rental investors, is somewhat similar to the instructions for working with flippers. It's just there's a middle part that's different. Other than these last 2 weeks, it's probably been a while since we've covered that. And I will tell you this, and I would write this down. Last week's webinar, where we went over the instructions for working with flippers, and tonight's webinar, where we're going to go over instructions for working with people who buy rentals, are two of the absolute most critical points of the program, the most critical methods you can learn for working with these folks, because this is literally where the rubber meets the road. When you master these sequence of steps, that's what's going to allow you to work less and make more money. Okay, this is actually this is what people pay for. You know, it takes time to go over, and it takes time to master. And for those of you who've done it, you know what I'm talking about. You've got to repeat this over and over again, 3-4 times, 3-4 weeks in a row, before you really finally start getting it experientially. But when you get it, I promise you this, you will never go back to any other method of working with investors. Okay, let me check for questions here real quick before I get too much further. Let's see here, where that was Scott's email. Okay, this is Bassam. Hello, Gary. Would you please provide the navigation to download or print the modules from the membership area? I couldn't find it. Thanks, that's Yassam. Yeah, I'm not sure, Bassam. That's really a Beverly question. What I'll do is, to tell you what, before the night's over, if we have a few extra minutes, I will stay on and we can go on to the website, the membership section, and see how that works. Actually, you know what you're talking about, the modules. You're talking about the modules, Bassam. Actually, the training modules are on a different platform. It's called Digital Chalk, and you actually got access to that through your initial email from Beverly, login and password. That's the training modules. So if you're talking about the live webinar recordings, then yes, that would be off of the My Investment Services website, and we can go into that, see if we can find it. I never deal with that, but let's try it at the end. Okay, Jamie says, what is the date for webinar for flipping? We went over that. And Jamie has another question. I have been unable to get into the members area. What should I do? I would email Beverly, Jamie. It's definitely up and running, because I know it because we have people using it, because we get questions on it. So there might be something in your login and password perhaps, but I would email Beverly and she can test it with you live. Like you'll get on the phone at the same time, and we'll work out those details with you. Okay, let's see. It is time to go into tonight's material. Okay, so now just to give you some context, all right? So you've done your marketing, and you want to appeal to investors who want to buy rental properties, okay? Now they respond to you. So potential investor calls you up and says, hey, I got your booklet. I'm intrigued. I like the formulas. I like the spreadsheets. I like the analysis sheets. And I like the fact that you actually put together a booklet, because no other agent has ever done this before me before. and they respond to you. Or you've held a workshop and you have people approach you at the end of the workshop and say, I'd like to work with you. Okay. The very first thing you do is you want to separate yourself from the crowd. So let's say you're at a workshop and there's 20 people around. You don't want to interview people at a workshop. Okay. You want to just gather their contact information and set an appointment. And you set the appointment. I like to do it in the evening after they've already had dinner and helped their children with their homework and maybe even got their children in bed. It's because you want these people to be able to focus and concentrate. So I always made my phone calls for this purpose at like 9 o'clock at night. And generally speaking, I would never do that, but I know at 9 o'clock at night, I'm going to have their full undivided attention. Now, let's say you use the booklet. They're typically going to call you, so it's much easier to have a conversation with them private one-on-one, and you can do that whenever they call you. Or you can, again, you can just basically set the appointment and get their contact information when you have them on the phone. Either way, if you already have them on the phone, you can interview them right there on the spot. And if not, if you're live in person in a group setting, set an appointment from there. Now, if you're ever in front of a person directly and it's just just the two of you, one-on-one, absolutely take the opportunity to discuss this with them then. Have the interview, gather information. And here's what we do. First things first. I always make sure I get name, full name, phone number, and email address. And I always ask them, hey, what is your best phone number? And what is your best email? Okay? Because a lot of people have multiple emails and sometimes they have multiple phone numbers. Work phone, home phone, cell phone, you name it. Okay? So now we're to the point where I'm going to assume you've gone through all of that and you got them on the phone at 9 o'clock at night. All right, and here's what I do. And you got to remember, this is all recorded, guys, so you can get this link tomorrow and replay it over and over again. Scott Mosley had an excellent point 2 weeks ago. He said, you know what? He said, Gary, I go back to the prior recordings, to prior webinars, review information, because you can do this while you're driving in your car. You can strip off the audio. While you're at the office, you can watch it on your phone. And repetition is the mother of success. I promise you, the more you listen to stuff and the more you read it, the more it's going to sink in. But in any case, there are a lot of prior webinars that go over this. Last time I went over this, I think, was back in September. So you can review that one also. In any case, back to this phone call. So you've got them on the phone. It's 9 o'clock at night. And they're either responding to you because you met them in person at a workshop, your workshop, or they responding to your booklet, for example. You always want to establish rapport first. So write that down. Always number one, establish rapport. Even if you already know the person, I can tell you, I've learned this hard way myself. My teachers used to tell me, I don't care, Gary, if you knew the person for 10 years and you speak to them every month or every week. At the beginning of every conversation, you always establish rapport. And it's easy to do. You just simply ask a question. Hey, how are the children? How is your last rehab project going? How is the coaching of your daughter's soccer team going? Something to establish rapport. You basically are reconnecting. It's vital, okay? Now, once you have that, okay, you can go into the conversation. Now, if you don't know these folks, like in this situation here, you definitely have to establish rapport first. Ask them, hey, are you a native of the area? What brought you to the area? That's always an excellent question, because it's easy to go from that kind of a question and answer or dialogue into the subject, okay? So how long have they been in the area? When did they move there? How do they like it? And then you can jump into the subject of the call, which is, hey, if they got a booklet, for example, how did you like the booklet? What did you like best about the booklet? Is there anything you wish you had in the booklet that would help you further? Okay? The next thing is this, and you definitely want to write this one down too. What do you think you'd like to do the most? Does flipping seem more appealing to you, or does buying rentals seem more appealing to you? And what you're trying to do is to bring them down the pathway of determining what their focus should be. And sometimes initially they're going to say, I don't know. I'd like to do both. So what you want to do is follow up with, okay, let's assume doing both makes sense. What in your mind would make sense being doing first, because you probably don't want to try to do a flip and a rental at the same time when you're right out of the gate. So which do you think would be more appropriate to do first? Which feels more appealing to you? And then they'll tell you. So if you don't get an answer that allows you to progress forward to specifics in targeting their intentions, just ask more questions. That's all you do. And always ask a question that requires them to provide an answer that's other than yes or no. I mean, you can ask yes or no questions, but that's more like a lawyer interrogating you. What you want to do is ask open-ended questions. How do you feel? What do you think? Things like that. Okay, and they'll tell you. You end up going down the road, in this case, of them saying, yeah, I think I'd like to do rentals. So now we're at that point. Okay, once you get to the point where they determine what it is they want to do, in this case, we're assuming they said they want to do rentals. All right. You want to find out if they're qualified. So at this point, I'd say you successfully established rapport. Okay, you went over the information they've already gotten from you prior. Because remember, like at the workshops, for example, you're going to hand out the rehab sheets, the cash flow sheets, things like that. Just hand them out like it's candy. All right. So they've already got stuff in their hands that they can use, and you want to make sure that they've kind of been working with it, if at all possible. But in any case, you establish rapport, you determine what it is they like to do, and then you want to qualify them. And here's how I qualify them. I always start off with making sure they understand, hey, you know what, this is a business. This isn't like buying and selling your own home. And investing is more like a business, and people want to know a little bit about who they're doing business with. Now, obviously, I'm obligated to keep your information confidential. However, and I'm not going to share this with any other party that we work with. However, I need to know myself that you're qualified, because I have to put my name on the line, telling these other agents that yes, I have pre-qualified you. It's just a rule of the game. It's just the rules of the game, and you're gradually conditioning these folks to work with you on your terms. Because by the way, you do want them to be qualified. You shouldn't work with them. So the first thing I ask is, what do you have in the way of savings? Okay, and get them comfortable. That's something it's not too pressing. It's not too invasive. And it's something that's absolutely critical for you. So what do you have in the way of savings? All right. I follow that with what is your credit rating? Do you know what your credit rate is? And if they don't know, I'd instruct them to go get it for free. You can go on and go to the there's a number of sites they can do too, but everybody's entitled to their free credit report every year. And there's 3 of them that are out there. TransUnion, Equifax, et cetera, et cetera. You want to have them pay to see what their credit rate is. And the reason is you want to know if they're going to be able to get a loan. And the credit rate is going to be a very good indicator of whether or not they'll be able to get a loan. Okay? That's the second question. So how much you have in savings is first. What is your credit rate is second. And third is this. Do you have an available line of credit that you can use? And in the case of business people, they typically do have a line of credit. Business owners almost always have a line of credit. Because investing is a business, they can use the line of credit to make down payments on properties, okay? Or even just pay outright, pay for a property outright. So that's the third question. Do they have a business line of credit they can use, or if they're not in business for themselves, just a line of credit that they can use? And that'll tell you that, number one, they definitely are creditworthy because they've got a line of credit. They might have available credit already that they can use. And hopefully the answer to the first question was, yes, I've got whatever, $12,000 in savings, for example. Okay? You always want to do that first, guys, because you're not only establishing rapport, you're establishing the foundation of your relationship with these folks. And the relationship is based on, credibility on their part and service on your part. And you want to make sure that they can do their part. So let's assume that now they're qualified, okay? You've interviewed them. You know what they want to do. They want to do rentals. And now you know they got some cash. They got some credit. And they hopefully will be able to get a loan should they need to secure a loan for the property. Once I have all the information, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to have them send an email to me, okay, recapping the conversation I've just had. Now, again, this is part of the class I teach at the market centers, but I reiterate it often because I see a lot of agents take shortcuts here, and they don't follow these steps. They don't qualify their clients, and they find themselves out there in the field running around only to find out that someone can't actually buy a property because they're not qualified. So that's why you do this first. I know I say it a lot, but boy, it's the number one reason why I see a lot of agents don't succeed as much as they'd like to is they don't take the time to get to know their clients and qualify them. You only want to work with the folks that actually will produce wealth and income for themselves and produce a commission check for you. So I had them send an email to me recapping the conversation. All right. Assuming they do that, okay, I will continue to work with them. So what I do is when I get the email, I immediately respond saying, hey, great, I got the email. Let's move forward here. In order for me to set up a search for you on the MLS, please sign and return this buyer's agency agreement. Now, at this point, it should be easy to get because you've already had them following your instructions so far. Okay, you gave them instruction to send you a recap email, and they sent you a recap email. Now you respond saying, okay, here's an official agreement that's designed to protect you and your confidentiality. All right. It also gives me what I need to go full throttle to work for you and guarantee you, my full undivided attention to serve you. So you get the buyer's agency agreement return, and as soon as you get that, now you can set them up on their first MLS search. Now, let's see, we got some questions at this point. Let's see, this is from Paul Rowe. At what point do you sign? Oh, there you go. At what point do you sign the buyer's agency agreement? So we just answered that. And Peter asks, when you get their email, do you ask them for proof of pre-qualification? Yeah, so what I do, Peter, is I ask them to, I don't ask for it right out of the gate. What I do is I have done that. Let me rephrase that. If they have it available, if they have already been pre-approved for a loan, I'll have them send me a copy of that in an email. I also will have them send me a proof of funds. If they're going to be using money in a CD for a down payment, I had them send me evidence of the CD for whatever, $10,000, $20,000. All right. Now, going forward, what I do is this: when I get them to the point where they're actually writing an offer, we're getting something under contract. At that point, I refresh their memory and I get updated copies. Now, if it's within 30 days, in a lot of cases, this is going to happen within 30 days of the initial contact. You can, a pre-approval letter is good for 30 days, or pre-qualification letter, excuse me. So if you get them 10 days out and you're going on the contract, you can use whatever they sent you right out of the gate. If time has lapsed, though, you always want to get updated proof. Always get updated proof as time goes on, because it's only good for 30 days, all right? Good questions, by the way, guys. So this shows me you're paying attention. Okay, this is Russ. Russ says, how do you handle them not wanting to give you their financial info before you have signed an agreement? Well, that's a personal call on your behalf, Russ. I generally, at that point, what I do is I'll say, I appreciate where you're coming from, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. However, in order for me to do my job, this is how I operate. I always make sure my clients are qualified first before I ever go out there and involve systems and other people, other agents, and other clients. Other consumers. I always want to make sure my clients are qualified right out of the gate. If you're okay with that, let's continue and work together. If not, I understand, and I respect you for that, and I wish you all the luck in the world. Okay, because I'm not working with anybody who's not going to demonstrate to me that they're qualified, because I only work with qualified people. Now, here's the irony in this, Russ, is the more you do this, the more used to it you get, and the more comfortable you get. And what happens is you start to come across with authority, and they'll just follow along. Let's face it, so far, they've already responded to your marketing, okay? You've already got them in an interview, and at this point, I'm assuming they followed up with a follow-up email, okay? So they're already following your instructions. I can't imagine this would happen a lot at this point. Now, I would say that would happen with investors who are already investing and you don't have a history with them. They might say, hey, you know what, I'm doing this with other agents. I don't really need to do this. This is not how I operate. Well, then you don't want to work with them anyways. Okay. So in any case, I hope I handled the question. I know it's kind of may seem kind of harsh, but the reality is your time is money, and you're gonna help these folks build wealth and income. I would hope that they would understand why that's necessary. It's just part of our business. We've got to do our jobs, you know. Okay, so we get them set up on the MLS for the first search. Remember, the MLS is only one way of helping your clients. It's just one source of inventory, all right? But let's go ahead and assume you've got them set up on the system. They've got their first batch of properties. Maybe it's 50, maybe it's 300. It just depends on where you are in North America. Some areas have very tight inventory, even the high population areas. Some areas have a lot of inventory, okay? In fact, where I'm teaching tomorrow in Aventura, Florida, there are, let's see, there's 10,976 listings. There's 5,000 agents, which is a good sign. It's 2 listings per agent. There's 4,600 that are pending, 4,660 properties under pending. They've actually got 3,888 multis right now in the MLS system. They got a lot of foreclosures. I wrote down 29,000. I don't think that's right because Aventura is an outskirt of Miami, and the average home price for the area is 1.376 million, and the average for that office is actually 344,000. So I think that she meant to say 29,000 REOs. That would be more like it. Now that's for the whole year. That's not just like right now. Okay, so I don't want you all to hop in your cars and start driving to Miami. Any case, so you've got their list. You set them up on the MLS system. They got their first batch of listings. All right. What you want to do is now go through the listings. Now, what I want you guys to do here, by the way, first off, write this down. I want you to practice this sequence on your own first. Practice it on your own first, so that when you walk it through it with your clients, you're going to be working from a position of comfort and knowledge, and not wondering and guessing. Okay. So the first thing we do is we get the set of listings. And by the way, I always give my clients the full listing. I'm up to this point right now. Okay. Number 4. I always give them the full listing with photos. In other words, that's the most information you can give a client on showing them an MLS listing, and all the photos I can get. Because with investors, I learned it's better to give them all the information you possibly can get, and not just give them like a real skinny email view that requires them to rely on you for everything. Okay, you want to give them all the information so they can use the tools they get to do the analysis. All right. Otherwise, you end up doing all the work. So, in any case, they've got all the listings. Maybe it's 100 listings. Let's just say it's 100. The first thing we want to do is separate the wheat from the chaff. We want to separate the good from the bad. And here's how we do it. Okay. I'm always going to go through an initial pass of the properties. I'm going to be looking at the list price, and the list price in and of itself really means nothing to me. It's meaningless. In and of itself, it means nothing. However, list price relative to other information is absolutely vital. And list price, in this case, relative to what we call prevailing market value for the area, or ARV if you want to use that term, after repair value. All that means is, market value for a decent property in decent shape that's in service and is marketable, and in the case of rentals can actually be leased and rented and so forth. Okay, so we got all of our properties, right? We're going to go through, look at list price compared to market value. Now, depending on where you are in North America, there's probably a half a dozen MLS systems that are out there. There's well over 400 MLS areas, okay, in the U.S. and Canada. So they're all slightly different, but again, they're all using one of about 6 different formats. So somewhere in your listing, there should be something that indicates market value. It may be a market value for tax purposes, what we call tax assessment value. It could be good old-fashioned market value based on retail numbers, right? Whatever the case is, you want to determine what market value is for the area, and particularly for that listing. If it's not in there, You know, what it'll do, typically a listing agent will grab that from the tax assessment database, okay, and plop it on the listing there, all right? Now, I have to throw in a couple of caveats here. There are certain parts of, at least in the U.S., I don't believe this happens in Canada, where they'll give you what's called the market value for tax purposes or tax assessment value. And so far, so good. You might think, well, okay, that should be pretty close to true market value. Well, it may or not be. But here's the point. Some areas of the country actually use what's called a base year on the assessed value. And they'll pick a year, a point in time, like say 1962, and all the properties on the tax assessment database will have a value that was for the time frame of 1962. Okay, it's called a base year. They'll use a base year value. All right, so in 1962, a house that today might sell for $500,000 may have only been worth $50,000 back then. So if you see a value that says $50,000, you just need to know that if you check to see if your tax assessor uses a base year, often you'll find out yes, they use a base year, and then you'll know, okay, you're working off base year. What would today's prevailing value be? Well, you might have to do a CMA. Somehow or another, you got to figure out what market value is for these types of properties, okay? By the way, some tax assessment systems, some counties actually use a percentage basis. So they'll take market value, but they'll base all the taxes on 25% of the full market value. So it actually will have a market value that looks like it's about 1/4 of what it should be. And I've seen it happen a number of times. In any case, if you have a scenario like that, you got to jump through an additional hoop to determine what does that equate to in today's values. So if something was worth $50,000 in 1963 or 1962, it may easily be worth $250,000 or $500,000 now. You just need to figure that out, and you do that by using your MLS system. In any case, back to the subject here. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for properties where the list price is at or below what I believe to be the fair market value for the building. Now remember, at this point, we haven't dug into cash flow and cap rate and net operating income and that kind of thing. We're going to do that here next, all right? But first thing I want to do is I want to focus on the properties that are already favorably priced. If I see properties that are priced at or above what I consider market value, why am I going to waste my time looking at those properties or have my clients waste their time? I only want to focus on properties that are priced below market value, and you'll know why here in a minute. So let's get into that. Now we're down here, okay? Before we get into that, by the way, once I've weeded out the properties that are overpriced, because you've got typically owners who are not reasonable, now I'm only focused on properties that are I believe priced below market value. And then I'll start looking at the nature and the characteristics of the property. I'm going to be looking at the pictures of the property. I'm going to be looking at the lot size, the room sizes, how many rooms, okay, how many bedrooms, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom units. If you're in an area where it's dominated by 2 bedroom units, and that's what the market wants, you might not want to be buying properties that have 3 bedroom units. You might want to focus on properties that have 2 bedroom units. You got to see what's working in the marketplace, and you can easily do that by using your going to your MLS system, going to your Planning Commission website, going to census data. There's a number of things you can do to determine what's in demand right now. So in any case, I'm looking at the pictures, I'm looking at the characteristics of the property, and I'm going to eliminate the ones that look like they're really bad. I don't want to buy junk. I want to buy nice properties, and of course I want my clients who also have nice properties to be focusing on these nice properties too. All right, so now I've weeded out more properties. Half of them I got rid of because they were overpriced. Another chunk I got rid of because they just look like bad properties. I can tell in the photos they've got roofs that are in bad shape. The pictures of the inside are bad. You got old kitchens and old appliances. Remember, on rentals, you don't want to have a lot of work. You don't want to be putting a lot of work in these places when you first buy a rental, because a rental should be generating cash flow from day one. So we're only focusing on the decent properties, not high priced, just decent properties that are already rented and showing a cash flow. That's very important, guys. So remember this. You only want to work with properties. You only want to work with investors who are buying properties that are already up and running. They're in service, they're rented, and they're showing a cash flow. Very, very important, because in today's environment, cash flow is king. It always is king. But the lenders are going to want to lend money on properties that are already up and running, but they're not going to be too thrilled about lending money on properties like a 4-unit building that's half empty. They're not going to like that too much. And maybe it's half empty because it needs a lot of work, all right? So in any case, back to the exercise here. We go through that exercise. So far we've gone through 2 passes of the data, and let's say we narrowed our search down from 100 properties down to 25. We cut half out the first pass. We cut 50 out. The second pass, we cut it in half again. We had 50 left, and we eliminated another 25. Now we're down to 25 properties. On those 25 listings, we should have enough financial information on the listing itself to do a basic pro forma, to do a basic cash flow analysis, all right? So I just want you to think about that for just a second. We're not gonna try to determine cash flow and cap rate and so forth until we're down to a much more manageable number of properties. We're going to eliminate as much of the negative stuff as possible before we start spending any more time on analysis on these properties. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So this is where you start using your calculators, right? So we narrowed it down. We cut it in half, and we cut it in half again. Now we're down there really a couple of dozen properties that looks like may make sense. So let's do some analysis on those properties. Now, what you want to look for are, for your area, what are the average rents? And you're going to have rents for grade A properties, different rents for B grade properties, and different rents for C grade properties. Now next week we're going to go over that. What is A property? What's a B property? What's a C property? What other tools do we have to find some inventory? We'll go over that next week. For right now, we're going to use some figures here from probably a low to medium priced area. This could be true in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, parts of Georgia and Florida. Very few areas in California would have rents this low, almost none of them, but everything's relative. So let's look at this. If we're looking at multi-unit buildings, okay, a duplex, a 3-unit building, a 4-unit building, what I want to find out is what is market value for a 1-bedroom unit in this area? What's the market value for a 2-bedroom unit in this area? What's the market value of a 3-bedroom unit in this area? When I say market value, I mean market value of rent. What is a market lease amount based on the marketplace? And again, remember your A, B, and C properties. So let's assume you're in a B area, and let's see, where do we have people from? Let's pick Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay. I don't know if Chad is on the phone here. We got a couple guys out there actually. So let's say we determine the average 1-bedroom unit's going for $400 to $500 a month. The average 2-bedrooms between $450 and $650, and the average 3-bedroom between $600 and $750. All right. So on your MLS printout, not the printout, on the MLS listing for these properties, you're going to be looking at the rents, and the rents relative to the number of units in the building and the number of bedrooms in the building. So let's assume that these are good rents for your area. If you're in California, like San Francisco or LA in town, you're going to want to basically quadruple these, okay, at a minimum. Certain parts of let's see, where have I been recently? Florida. These will be low for most parts of Florida, except for say Winter Haven. Winter Haven, these might be good rents for Winter Haven. But in any case, what you're looking for are rents that are commensurate with your area for the type of property that you're looking at, all right? And make sure that you have all the information on the listing. Sometimes a listing agent will only give you so much information, What I would do is I would email them and say, I need to have this information on the properties. I have a client who's interested, but he's not going to do any desktop analysis until he has some information on the properties. Sometimes a listing agent will put this information in an attachment. Okay. Any case, so let's go through. Let's say now you've reduced the number of properties that you're doing analysis on in half again. Now you're only looking at 12 to 13 properties because the rents on the area are at, or sorry, the rents for the units you're looking at are at or above market rates for your area. Now at the same time, we're looking at other information. What we want to know is what are the taxes on the property? Okay, what are any other expenses that we can determine? Some expenses are relatively fixed, like insurance is a fixed expense. Some of the variables could be maintenance and repairs. You might spend $500 on a new water heater this month, and then you might have hardly any expenses for the next 6 months. Okay, it's all relative, and you're looking for averages for the year. So in any case, I like to see on $100,000 worth of property insurance costs of no more than $500 per year. Okay, $500 for every $100,000 in value. That's one of my benchmarks. The more expensive the property, the insurance obviously will go up, but percentage-wise, it shouldn't be going up all that dramatically. Okay, so in any case, look at whatever expenses you can get at that time, and figure out if those are reasonable expenses for the area. All right. Okay. Let me do a quick break here before we go further, because I just got to a good breaking point and I've given you a lot of information. So let me scroll and look at the pictures. Hang on one second. Okay, let's see here. We've got okay, I think I'm caught up here. That's Russ. Okay, this is from Deanna Foley. Hi, Deanna. Deanna's new from Florida. Okay, FYI, I just read today an article from NAR for 55-plus people starting to rent instead of buy, which is a good lead for into investors. Yeah, it's interesting you said that, Deanna, because you're exactly right. We this came out a couple years ago. We were predicting that we were headed into a 8 to 13 year period of increased volumes of renters and increased rents. Okay, and there are certain markets where probably makes more sense to rent as opposed to buy. All right, so that's interesting you brought that up, because now we're looking at, we believe we're in a 6 to 8 year window right now of increased rents and increased numbers of renters. That's why when people ask me, what should I do now? Should I buy flips or buy rentals? I say whatever floats your boat, but for me personally, I'm going for the rentals, guys. Okay. In any case, thanks, Deanna, for bringing that up. Let's see. Jamie asks, okay, do you send them all of the listings, full listings? And she just answered, yes, absolutely, Jamie. Give them everything. Give them all the information, right? Okay, this is Peter. Hi, Peter. Let's see. Okay, I know I asked this before, but when determining the ARV, do you do a CMA of the property based on past sold price, or doing the opportunity worksheet on several sold properties to determine the average cap rate? Okay, good question, Peter. It actually depends on the size of the property. So if you're looking at duplexes, the market value, what we call the sales data, you're using the sales approach, sales comparison approach for determining value. You'll generally use a CMA based on other sales in the area. Now, if you're looking at larger properties, it's all about cash flow and it's all about cap rate. Okay, cash on cash return and cap rates. So what I would do is I would use the opportunity evaluator or the cash flow worksheet or the rental property evaluator, the online version, and determine the value based on that. And now here's the tricky part, Peter, and for everybody else, this is really important. I want you to put your pencils down for a second and focus for a second. Okay, cap rate is not a broad base. It's not something you should use on a broad scale. In other words, a cap rate for Boston could vary zip code by zip code, and it can vary dramatically. Matter of fact, Peter, you're from the area, so you'll know if you go to downtown Boston, the cap rate there may be vastly different from South Boston or North Boston. All right, and for everybody else in the country, what you want to do is see what has been the prevailing cap rate for the area. And if you don't want to go through the time to do some MLS searches to determine that, just go online and Google whatever your area is. Lake City, Florida, cap rates, and you'll get what the range of cap rates are. Okay, so the reason cap rate's important, if you think back to the lesson of 2 weeks ago, you want to use the cap rate to help determine value. All right, so if you have a 10% cap rate, that's the prevailing cap rate for Lake City, Florida, and your net operating income is $10,000 per year. Well, 10% cap rate means that property should be valued at $100,000. Okay. In any case, Peter, I hope that answers your question. Most appraisers, Peter, and I do this myself. I used to own an appraisal company. I will determine value a number of different ways. If you look at any appraisal on rental properties, they'll give you the sales approach, they'll give you the cash flow approach, or the net operating income approach, and they'll give you what's called the cost basis approach. Okay, but always remember this rule of thumb, guys: the more units you have, the more the valuation is based on cash flow and less on other sales in the area. The more units you have in a property, the more the value is going to be based on cash flow and less on comparable sales. Okay, you might need to let that sink in for a second. And that is an excellent question, Peter. Thank you so much. Okay, Margaret, north of Boston, we were looking at more like $1,200 to $1,800 per unit rents, and $125,000, $150,000 in price, and that's actually excellent, Margaret. I mean, there's a lot of parts of the country where the average rent is less than 1% of the cost basis of a property. So if you look at yours, your average rent of $1,200 to $1,800 per month is well within that 1% range of your cost basis. And that's on a, by the way, what I'm talking about here, guys, and Margaret is asking about, you look at your monthly rent. If your monthly rent is less than 1% of your cost basis of the property, so if you have a $100,000 property and your monthly rent is only $1,000 a month, you've got to really think hard about that property. I can make it work. I mean, I can make any property work almost anywhere. But what you're looking for is the most favorable ratio of monthly rent to cost basis. So now these days are long gone, but it used to be we could get properties with a 2% monthly gross rent multiplier. So we would have $2,000 in rent coming in, and the cost base was only $100,000. That's very hard to do. There's parts of the country where it's actually less than 1%, like Northern California, for example. All right. If the bottom line is this: most places around the country, you want your gross monthly rent to be greater than 1% of your cost basis. Okay. Now, you've got to look at your area. That's going to be true for places like Indianapolis and Pittsburgh and places like that. But in places like Boston, Miami, San Francisco, LA, Montreal, Toronto, Boston, that you're going to be hard pressed to find areas in the city where the rent, the gross rent, is greater than 1% of the cost basis. Now, what Margaret's talking about is north of Boston, and that's excellent. I mean, I would have been investing there if I was there. Okay, Jamie. Jamie says, never mind. Okay, that was back to the do I give them the full listing? Of course, yes. The answer is yes. Let's see. This is Peter. Peter says, I think it's sinking in. So I'm dealing with more 3 to 4 families. Would you consider a CMA or a cap rate there? It's hard because if it's that in between, I feel, and it's mostly what I deal with. I tell you what, Peter, you're right at that critical point where when you get to 5 or more units, you're going to be using more cap rate. At that 4-unit level, I would absolutely do both. I would do comparable sales, like in a CMA, and I would also do cap rate. So definitely do both. And by the way, Peter, look at some examples of other solds in the area and see what their cap rate was. Okay, see what the price was relative to the CMA, and then look at the cap rate, and that'll tell you what your trend is. Okay, that's how you determine that. Actually, that's an excellent question, by the way. Okay, let's get back to the subject here. So far we've been able to look at the property online. Everything we've done is online, strictly on the computer. Nobody's driven anywhere. Nobody's going anywhere. We've got a reasonable degree of knowledge of income and expense. Okay. Now, as far as average price per unit, and I only threw this in there because it's actually I put the note here. Note, different areas will have vastly different pricing models. Study your area and make adjustments accordingly. I just use this as an example for the rents given above. This is kind of what I would look for a per unit cost. Okay. If I'm looking at a 3-bedroom unit that's bringing in between $600 and $750 a month, I want to be spending about $35,000 per unit. Okay, and it's say a 4-unit building, which is where Peter's working at right now. If it's a 2-bedroom unit where I'm getting between $450 and $650, I want it to be about $30,000 per unit. And if it's a 1-bedroom unit where I'm getting between $400 and $500, I want to be spending about $25,000 per unit. Now remember, this is what you might find like in Dayton, Cincinnati, Columbus, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Buffalo, Cleveland. Did I say Indianapolis? I said that. Yeah, Macon, Georgia, parts of Texas, outskirts of Houston, for example. Okay, even parts of Florida, like again Winter Haven, for example. Now, everywhere else in the country, you've got to. This is all relative. So, if you're getting $1,000 in rent on a 1-bedroom unit, you might be spending $100,000 per unit for a 1-bedroom unit. I would hope not. I'd hope to, like in the case of Margaret, maybe you can get a 1-bedroom unit for less than $100,000, but hopefully it's bringing in $1,000 or more per month rent. Okay, so now what we're doing is we got this financial data. We're really able to focus on the properties now that had the best cash flows. All right. Now, something to keep in mind. I'm assuming that we're buying turnkey properties here. All right, not empty vacant properties that need to be rehabbed. On the rentals right now, it's better to focus on properties that are already showing a cash flow. If you buy rentals like a duplex or a 4-unit building or a 3-unit building that needs to be remodeled and rehabbed, a lot of banks are not going to want to finance those. They want to only finance a building that's already rented. Okay, so you've got to have some capital on hand if you're going to buy a property that needs to be remodeled, a rental that is, and remodel it out of your own pocket or get another loan to do it. And while you're remodeling it, generally it's going to be sitting empty, not generating cash flow. Now, there's an exception here. Let's say you're buying a 4-unit building, okay, and it does need to be somewhat remodeled, but it's rented out. Rent out 3 of the units, okay, but the 4th one, go ahead and remodel. And then once it's remodeled, rent that one out. And then the next time a lease comes up, let it go and remodel that unit, okay, and keep remodeling until you raise the value of your property. Now you've got a much more valuable property, okay, and you can refinance it at its higher value. But the bottom line is, for the most part, we want you to focus on turnkey properties right now, and we want you to focus on investors who want turnkey properties, and that's going to be your professionals. Your engineers, your chiropractors, your dentists. A lot of firemen and policemen like these properties, however, they're not afraid to rehab. In any case, what you're doing is you're developing your instincts, you're developing your intuition, and when you master this, you're going to be able to communicate this with your clients and show them how to do this, because you're going to give them all the listings and you're going to give them all the tools, okay? Now, once we have that, or your clients have it at this point, they're going to do a drive-by, not you, assuming this is you working with your client. They're going to do the drive-by and narrow that property list down even further, because what you're trying to do is have your clients get it down to about 6 properties. It says 7 here, but it could be 4, could be 7, could be 5, could be 6. You never want to look at fewer than 3 properties, and you never want to look at more than 7, because the human brain is not capable of tracking detailed data on more than 6 or 7 properties. It's just, that's a scientific fact. So let's say they narrowed the list down. Now what you can do is you're going to be setting the appointments to go see these properties, okay? And this is where you finally get in your car and you go meet these people on site at the properties. And you're going to walk through them all. Your clients are all walking through. They're going to have their cash flow sheets with them, their cost sheets. So if they're if you're looking at units and you see that maybe they could use some new carpeting or use some new countertops, this is where your investors are going to write this stuff down. Okay, you're going to verify the tenancy, you're going to verify the cash flow, all this kind of stuff. All right, while you're there, because you can talk to the tenants and ask them, hey, what is it you're paying in rent? And if they say they're paying $500 and the MLS says they're paying $1,000, you might have a challenge on your hands. So always talk to the tenants. Tenants will sing like a bird when you talk to them. All right. But in any case, you're walking through the units with your clients. Be careful not to dominate and take over and take control. Let them do the analysis. Let them fill out the sheets, okay? So you go through, say, 6 properties, 2 units and 3 units and 4 unit properties. You look at all the units, look at the inside, look at the outside. And at the end of the day, this is where the money's made. Instead of saying something like, hey, this was a great day, we've seen a lot of properties, why don't you review all this and let me know when you're ready to talk about it. Don't ever do that. Here's what you want to say, and I'd write this down. Hey, it was a great day. We saw 6 great properties. You've got your notes and your cash flow sheets. Now you can update them based on what you've seen in person and your cost sheets for any repairs that need to be made. Let's look at them side by side. And you bring up all 6 properties. You lay them out side by side. And you can compare 2 at a time, or you can compare one against all the other 5. And what you want to say is, look at this property compared to the others. Is this one property one of the ones you think you would keep at the end of the day? If you could only buy one, would this be one that would be in the running, or would you say, no, I like others better than this one? Whatever one they say they don't like, you ball it up and throw it away. It's a cathartic way to demonstrate that is now a part of the past. You're not going to spend any more time on it. And you keep doing that. Compare each property against the others. Again, you could do the other method, which is just compare 2 at a time. And that's easier, by the way. You compare property 1 with property 2. And if they say property 2 is better than property 1, throw away property 1. Then you compare property 2 with property 3. Which one survives? What you're trying to do is narrow this down to no more than 3 properties, okay? And hopefully, obviously, at least one of them. Now, what you do is you tell them, okay, great. Now you're down to 3 properties. We can't throw away any more because all 3 of them look promising. I want you to go home, review your numbers, add up the costs for any potential repairs, and I will call you at 9 o'clock at night. And by the way, before I call you, I want you to scan an email or fax to me your homework. They're going to scan an email to you, their cash flow sheets, their cost sheets, everything they've done, and you're going to review it with them over the phone and help them narrow down to the final property that they make the offer on. Okay, and here's the other part where the rubber meets the road. You tell them, okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and write up the offer now. I'm going to send it to you. Please review it and sign it and send it back to me via email, or if you're using DocuSign, use DocuSign. And include with that a separate attachment, a separate attachment for your proof of funds, a photocopy of the hand money check, and a separate attachment. Okay, so you're going to have 3 things. The written offer signed by them, the proof of funds from them, and the photocopy of the hand money check from them. All right. Now in the morning when you wake up, you can present your offer. That's how you start getting out there, swinging the bat, and getting on base. You should have about a 2/3 ratio. 2/3 of your offer should be accepted using this method. Now, the reason I focus on this last part so much is this. At the end of the day, when you've looked at your properties, you never leave the scene leaving control in their hands. You leave the scene saying, given that you give them an instruction to follow, and you let them know you're going to call them at 9 o'clock at night. So the expectation is you're going to review this information quickly. You do not want to let it get stale, because if you found some good properties, and you likely have, if you follow the instructions, there could be other investors who've also discovered the same properties, and you need to move fast. And I promise you, all it takes is your client to miss out on one opportunity, and they'll never do it again. They will always follow suit quickly when you go through this method, okay? Now that, folks, is how you do it, okay? You make your offer. You get into negotiating. We'll talk about negotiating in a different webinar, all right? But what I want to do is this. I'm glad we got through this tonight. I was hoping we would. Next week, we're going to get into more about the aesthetics of the neighborhoods. We're going to determine what is a neighborhood, a B neighborhood, and a C neighborhood. We're going to focus on certain methods you can use to find inventory for your flippers. And if we have time, we'll focus on how do you find inventory for your folks who buy rentals too. We'll just see how well we do next week. But let me check on questions here before we go, so hang on one second. Let's see. This is from Deanna. Hi, Deanna says, sorry, I missed the acronym MAO. Yeah, Deanna, MAO stands for Maximum Allowable Offer. And if you look in your training material, it'll be in Module 2. You should be getting Module 2 any day. And look in there for MAO, and it'll describe to you exactly how you determine what MAO is, Maximum Allowable Offer. So, in any case, guys, great night. We actually got through a complete subject. How about that? Let's see. We got another question from Peter. Okay, do you send all 3 offers at once with checks for each one, or you bet one and see if they are accepted first? Okay, here's what I do, Peter. If the client can buy 3 properties, and sometimes they can, yes, we will make all 3 offers. If they can only buy 1 property, all right, I have them, and actually will help them figure it out. I have them determine which one they cannot live without, which one do they want the most, and make an offer on that one first. Okay, the reason is I don't want to have 3 offers out there if I know I can't follow through with all 3 offers. Your reputation is everything, and so does that of your investor. So focus on the first one first, okay? And things will move pretty quickly. You'd be surprised. The other thing too, Peter, is this. If you make 3 offers and your client can only buy 1, you may miss an opportunity to hand off those other properties to some of your other investors. So have them only focus on the one they want the most, get it under contract. If it doesn't work, go for the next one. If it goes under contract, the other 2 properties that made sense, send them to your other investors. Or if you can buy one yourself, buy it yourself. Quite frankly, the investor did the analysis, and you just were their coach and their guide and their consultant or their advisor, okay? So that's another good business reason for you to only do one at a time if that's all you can do. Okay, let's see. Kelly Boyd. Hi, Kelly. What does the offer to purchase look like? Is it a form? Yeah, so Kelly, I always use the board's forms. Wherever you are, whatever your local real estate board is, use their forms always to make an offer. Now, if your investor has some creative language you'd like to use, Kelly, always put that in a separate addendum and attach the addendum to your sales agreement. So, and if anybody ever gives you a kickback on, well, why don't we just use my form? Tell them this, Kelly. Tell them the reason is this. All real estate law is the only form of contract law that is required to be in writing in order to be supported. It's not a law. Like, you can make a verbal offer. It won't, if there's ever a dispute, it's the only form of contract law where a judge will not hear the case. He would say, I can't hear this case because it's not in writing. If you have a contract with a plumber and it's a verbal contract, yes, you can go to court and a judge will listen to the case. Not with real estate. It has to be in writing to be supported in the court. Now, having said that, there are federal laws, what we would call the plain language laws. All contracts to be supported in any court has to meet plain language tests. Okay, all of our real estate boards forms across the U.S. and Canada have been determined to meet plain language laws. They have the same thing up in Canada. That's the second thing. The third thing is this. Those contracts have already been pre-approved all the way to the state Supreme Court level in at least every state that I've been in. I don't know that that's true up in Ontario and Quebec. I can't remember. But in all of the U.S. states, they are all approved all the way up to the state Supreme Court level, pre-approved. What that means is if you find yourself in court, or your client does, and they have a board form, it's going to be supported. If they have an internet form, something they get off the internet, a judge at any level could say, I don't recognize that contract, and therefore I'm not going to hear the case, and your client's got to start all over again. All right? That should be enough juice or enough motivation for your clients to use the board's forms. Okay, Peter says, oops, sorry, Peter, let me get back to your question here. Light bulb went off. Thank you. Oh, you're very welcome, Peter. Thank you very much. Okay, let's see. This is from Kelly again. Purchase and sale agreement is 10 pages. I usually prepare it. I guess I should ask enough questions to fill out all except for the price and address. Yeah, so Kelly, what you do is you want to always want to find out if they're financing, how much they intend to finance, if they have a lender, which lender they're using, and they probably already do. So get all that information up front. Okay, so when you fill out that form, you are pre-filling it out almost completely, as much as you can, before you send that to them. And then they may have to fill in like inspection selections and things like that. But that's a different story. We get into that, by the way, in another module, another class. I will tell you this though: the simpler your offer, the more likely it is to be accepted. In other words, if you can eliminate all these contingencies, those offers always get more readily accepted. Okay, let's see. Any other questions? All right, so far so good. Great questions tonight, guys. And by the way, excellent turnout, excellent participation. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate being on these live webinars. And by all means, go back, go to the membership section. If I think, Jamie, you've got to contact Beverly. For everyone else, go back in there like Scott does. Look at the catalog of recorded webinars and see which ones look appealing to you. Copy them down, put them on a CD, whatever you want, or DVD, excuse me. Listen to them all you want, because repetition is the mother of success. All right, guys. Oh, let's see. There's another question here. Hang on one second. Hang on one second. Let's see. Questions. That was Kelly's. Okay, this is Deanna. How to find the previous webinars. So, Deanna, if you go to the membership section, they're on there. You just have to go to the member section, and I wish I could. I haven't been there myself, so I don't know what that looks like, but it's obviously out there. What I'll do is this: I will get Beverly. If you're not, Deanna, go out to the website and look for the recorded webinars. You'll see them out there. If you can't find them, contact Beverly, and what I'll do is I'll have Beverly maybe put together the instructions she sent out initially with the initial email that everybody got, and we'll put that out there in the email format. Okay. Let's see. This is Jamie. How do I get a login for my husband? Definitely contact Beverly, Jamie. So if your husband's going through with you, he can get his own login and password, and Beverly can get that to you. This is Deanna. Let's see. Bev said I'm not in membership yet until February. We are a month behind. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. Let's see. Where are we now? We're at the 21st. Okay. So hang on till, let's see, February 1st is going to be, where am I here? Hang on one second. Oh, it's a Monday. Hot diggity dog. Okay. So Monday, February 1st, according to Beverly, you should receive your login and password. Other than that, I'm not sure how to get on ahead of time. I don't know the answer to that, if it's possible. Let's see. Doris says, thank you, Gary. This has been a very, very good webinar. Hey, Doris, you're welcome, buddy. I'm glad to help you. And Scott Mosley, here's the membership site. Okay, everybody, if you're still on, the membership site is www.myinvestmentservices.com/members-area. Members with a minus sign area. Okay, that's the membership area. Now, it sounds like the back office people are behind and getting people their logins and passwords. I have to call them and find out what's going on there. So, okay. Also note, all students registered during the current month are loaded into the members-only website at the end of the month as the month closes out. Thanks, Scott. I didn't know that. So for Jamie and Deanna, all new students throughout the month are basically, sounds like put in a queue, and then you're loaded up at the end of that month. That's why. Okay, I didn't know that. Thanks, Scott, for telling me that. All right, guys. Hey, great class. And remember, if you guys go out there and you recruit people, okay, and you bring them in, most of you are KW. In that case, you actually will get, if you bring them through, if they come through this training program because you brought them in, remember, you'll get a $250 marketing fee for that. So if you want to make a quick $250, and you want to bring in a friend from another agency or a spouse who wants to get their license, if they come through the training program, you get $250 right out of the gate. Beverly always asks me to mention that, and I keep forgetting. Okay, you guys have a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next week. Okay, bye-bye.